Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Timber event, in which the Timberwolf is added to the game. So this week, most notably, we have ourselves a Vault event weekend, but to get there, we have a somewhat annoying journey troop. Of course, all the journey troops have been nerfed. However, we do have an alternative journey troop to technically use this week, given that they ended up making the doomed weapons, the new category of doomed weapons that we're getting, basically into the old journey troops, in a sense. And given the restriction, we actually are allowed to use this over the journey troop. We still have to use the journey troop itself for double points, but we do have an alternative now, which is kind of cool. But anyways, let's go first into the Timber event itself, which gives the Timberwolf. So this is a great time to stock up on blue, purple arcanes if you end up needing any of these. As far as this troop is concerned, it is rather unique, but I feel like other than outside of this event, it's probably not going to get used too often. I would love to see a mythic version of this in the future that isn't completely horrible, as the premise of what it is very, very good. It is the first troop, unless I'm forgetting one, that has all three reductions that are currently available in the game. It has spell reduction, skull reduction, and skull dodge. There are many that have two of these three, but I can't think of a single one off the top of my head that was all three, though if you guys know of any, do let me know. But I'm pretty sure it is the very, very, very first to actually have this mechanic. Though I'm starting to lose track with like 1,300 something troops, whatever we're at right now. But anyway, spell reduction, of course, small amount, but hey, spell reduction. 33% skull reduction, a little bit better than armored or something else. And 20% skull dodge. Not a lot, but you know, that can still help tank quite a bit. With this 33% reduction if they do hit, and 20% it just outright does nothing, which can also dodge actual on-skull effects as well. So really, really tanky. Great first slot. And on top of that, it command accumulates. It explodes all brown gems, gain a bunch of armor boosted by brown gems destroyed, and it's at a 1-to-1 ratio. So if there's 10 browns on the board, it will do 10 additional armor. Unfortunately, this armor gain is only for itself. You can't armor boost things that have boost ratio. It also doesn't have any boost ratio for armor, as the boost ratio is specifically for the amount of brown gems. However, that's still a lot of mana accumulation potentially. Obviously, if there's like 10 browns on the board, 10 browns being exploded is not too bad. Very similar to Leprechaun, but without the Empower in a sense. Though it would be really cool if something like this did have Empower instead of one of these other two thingies, but it would be a little strong in that case if it did. But anyways, but yeah, really good overall tank. Probably not going to be used too often, but there are some restrictions where you're going to probably use it a lot. The main one is a War Gear and Grimswood's restrictions. It is among one of the better tanks that you can actually do, unless you're going down the Devour route with like Cerberus or Wolf Garrick. But as far as overall tankability, without needing some kind of other gimmick to end up working with it, just off of traits alone, it is the tankiest thing pretty much in Grimswood, just in its totality of what it can end up doing. So it has that going for under restrictions, which are very applicable to this week. So definitely worth considering using. One thing that's also pretty nice, if we go over to pets and go over to unowned over here, we are only missing 2 starry pets, and as of this week, we are only missing 1 starry pet, the one for Kazale, as, of course, we have a Grimswood's week this week, and with a Grimswood week, that is now the second to last new trial. As far as the trial team is concerned, you can actually use it purely in its default form, which is kind of nice. You have the Direwolf, which is actually a really good common. It's probably like top 10, somewhere in top 10 of commons. It's really strong. It doesn't get used too often because once you have better options, it's not as needed. But it does have potentially 4 times skull damage, because you get Hunter's Marking, and then it entangles with Hunter's Mark the first enemy. So Hunter's Mark lets you do 2 times skull damage. But on top of that, he also does double damage to Entangle. So if they could be applied both Entangle and Hunter's Mark, he's effectively doing 4 times skull damage. A little bit more annoying to set up than something like a Web Spinner, but a common that could basically do Web Spinner damage while having 20% skull dodge. Pretty cool. And it also has if there's 13 more green on the board, it also gains an extra turn while doing a little bit of poke damage. So the Entangle and Hunter's Mark is the main thing. But if nothing else, the poke damage that it does can remove barrier, as that will be an instance of damage that will remove their barrier, allowing you to then do a 4 times skull against them. So obviously not applicable to this specific fight, but just generally speaking, ends up having that capability. Actually, I say that, doesn't this other guy have... no, he just has a buff. He doesn't actually do the barrier thingy. I was confusing his HP buff for a barrier. But no, you don't have to worry about it in this fight. But anyways, really high damage. Apply it, get the kills. Main premise here. Fenrir, basically keep clicking Direwolf until you win. You just keep throwing this. He does have leader, but there's no point putting him in first slot. Just put it all into Direwolf. Hope he doesn't die with a skull dodge. Eventually you get lucky even with lower stats and just keep dodging. Forest Guardian, skull spam. So after you get your Direwolf nice and big, you go and skull spam. It converts all purple to skulls and transforms all brown to green. Green you need for all your mana accumulation. Well, most of your mana accumulation. And then as 3 of them end up using it. And then, of course, the skulls is where you're going to use with your buffed up Direwolf from your Fenrir in order to kill out everything with 4 times damage, or 2 times where applicable. And then, aside from that, it also gives 50% mana start to all beasts, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the entire team of 4 times beasts. So every single thing on the team, except for your last slot, will end up getting a 50% mana start, which already has a 50% mana start, so your entire team will have 50% mana start. And on top of that, while this troop isn't that good, he does have Resummon, and will be the main thing that will make sure that you will be able to get through it. It creates 8 blue and green gems, which isn't that great. However, it then gets to summon 1 to 3 more Grimswood troops, which is actually really good, because this means if you're falling behind, you will be able to go just basically completely resummon a team. This is going to be nice if you do end up losing your Direwolf. Ideally, you don't want to lose your Direwolf. You just keep buffing it and be able to use that. But eventually, you might miss with a Forest Guardian cast or just damage pressure you, depending on your stats. For the most part, there isn't really much that can kill you. They have a little bit of poke damage off of that. This thing does also pretty much no damage. Direwolf's just a small buff that doesn't really do anything. And this thing literally just targets a random target. In all fairness, the AI normally targets a random target, but they do sometimes target something when they're weaker. So that's mostly what Warg will be doing. It'll probably be their main cleanup option. Unfortunately, don't really have a direct way of killing the Warg. Their most dangerous option is all the way in last slot. And of course, this team kills from the top down. The only way you'd really be able to target your Warg, which is not really realistic to do, is to get a summon off of this troop to end up targeting it down. But for the most part, you're just going to go from the top down, work your way down, and kill it all out with Direwolf, which is pretty straightforward. Honestly, one of the easier trials we've had in a while. Definitely easier with higher stats, but even with lower stats, it has a lot of gimmicks that can help you, like resummon and the 20% dodge, as well as just the life gain that you end up getting from Fenrir as well. Even though you're mostly using it for attack, you do get to use it for life sum as well. Anyways, as far as the event key drop table is concerned, is for Grimswood, of course. As far as Grimswood, there's a lot of weird things that are not in drop table. Almost this whole row is. But anyways, as far as what is not in drop table, let's actually go for the top down for once. So, Hatter and Scroll is, but Hatter Ascendant and Scroll Reborn aren't. The easiest way to identify them is the ones that say boss next to them here. Those two are not in drop table. They are specifically from Soulforge, or more so specifically from getting a drop from the Vault Key drop table that then gives you the thing you need in order to craft them from Soulforge. So those two are Soulforge only and cannot be in the event key drop table, whereas Hatter and Scroll, the one specifically called Hatter and Scroll, is, but the two independent ones that are called Hatter Ascendant and Scroll Reborn are not in drop table. But is also not in drop table, of course, is the purple Celestial Dragon. This was added with the Celestial Dragon drop table when we got that a couple months back. You'd have to get it from there as far as getting that thing. Pretty useful for Under Spire this week as well, if you want to end up utilizing that. As far as other things not in drop table, of course, all the faction troops, as per usual, are from the Hellgate faction and are not in drop table. And the last thing here that is not in drop table is the Moon. I believe this is 1 to 2 cards you need for one of these two as well. However, the Moon is in the Vault Key drop table and cannot be obtained from event keys. So everything else that you see here is available through event keys. If I'm not missing anything, just double checking. Yeah, it looks like everything. As far as what you would open event keys for this week, not much. It's honestly not really that worth it. As far as pickups that you might want to go for, I don't feel like it's used too much in the current state of the game because Beast is a rather average typing, but there are a lot of them, if nothing else. But 50% Mana Star off of Forest Guardian. Not too commonly used, but if you are building a Beast-oriented team, or if you ever have a Beast-oriented restriction, like in PvP and the such, it could come into handy, as it'll be the main utility troop that you're going to be using, so might as well get it now, as we might, by the time you have easy access to this troop again, we probably are going to have an option in PvP that's going to be like, hey, you have to use 4 times Beast. And, you know, in that situation, you're almost always using Forest Guardian on your team when you're restricted in such a way. So I highly advise picking this up, as is by far the most useful utility troop in this entire kingdom, even when considering mythics and everything else. Aside from that, yeah, there honestly isn't much. You'd already be getting this troop from the event itself. Cockatrice is nice, but it's already such a low rarity thing that you don't really need to worry about having. You probably already have it laying around. And aside from that, I guess Wolf Garrick does get some usage, as well as the Dragon, but Dragon's not on drop table. But Wolf Garrick does have an interesting gimmick, and then it gives a bunch of attack and magic to all War Gears, so in like pure War Gear teams, can get a little bit of value there. He also ends up having a Devour when he gets a kill, though a lot of times Ubistet is used over this, things that can double kill a little bit more consistently. The biggest issue with Wolf Garrick is that he has a very low base damage, which is raised a little bit by his magic, but his overall base damage is pretty low for something that's trying to get a double kill compared to other options that exist within the game. So even though it can do the mechanic, other things kind of do it better. So you're mostly looking for a Forest Guardian if you don't already have it, or anything to complete out stars. Grimswood is, I believe, 27 or 28 stars, but of course it is locked to most people from the upgrades. This is a, what deed book is this place? This deed book is green, so obviously, if you haven't already, the main green one that you want to put all your green deeds into is Zolkari. Zolkari is a magic-based kingdom that you'll end up needing to do it for as far as getting all your bonuses. So you do want to make sure you go and max out this place first when it comes to the star level thing with all your deeds, as getting that to level 20 for the extra magic gain is way higher priority than any other location. So basically, this place is stuck at 26 for forever, or at least for a very, very long time. So, yeah, 26 star, even though I think he could reach like 27 or 28 as of today. Anyways, aside from that, other things to go over. Let's go over the Journey event. So Journey, of course, got a huge nerf the last Journey event, and that nerf is still in play, which is not ideal. This makes it really clunky to actually do anything at all. But we do have the unnerfed version of the Journey troop technically available this week. You do have to always use at least one keeper on your team. Luckily he has double magic, but you need him for his 3-time score. Using multiple does not give you multiple extra score, but having at least one on your team is pretty much required to maximize your score. In order to get at least one, you'll have to go buy into at least tier 2, though it is advised to get to tier 3 to basically get a free weapon. Weapon isn't really that good, you're not really going to be using it. However, it is a weapon, one less thing you'll need later. And if you want to use more than one on your team, you will have to at minimum buy to tier 4 and then use 2 blue orbs on it, as you'll need to make sure not to ascend it so that you have 6 copies. And 6 copies would allow you to use 2 on a team, 3 on a team. No need for 4, but it would allow for 2 and 3 if you want to end up incorporating that, which is definitely worth considering if you're missing a lot of the stronger options. Speaking of stronger options, there is one absurdly strong option that if you do not have, you're basically just going to have to spam 3 Keeper of Paths, most likely, or 2 Keeper of Paths with a weapon and a mana accumulator. But basically, Doomed Volge. We do have access to this, as the restriction is War Gear and Purple, but because the War Gear thing doesn't apply to Hero, we're allowed to use any Hero class as well as any Purple weapon. And one thing that is under the category of any Purple weapon, of course, is the pretty recently added Doomed Volge. We only have one of these in the game currently, and it is for Purple, which is very convenient because we need Purple right now. It is basically pre-nerfed Journey Troops, so not exactly. It deals a bunch of damage to the first 2 enemies, plus 2 per temporary level, so a total of 20 per hit and 40 total damage. It then creates 2 purple gems for each purple ally and enemy, with the enemy part being particularly relevant. Your team is already restricted to be pure purple, so right there, that'll end up getting us to a nice solid 8. But then for every single enemy that's on the opposing team, we'll also get a additional 2, which is almost always going to bring us to 10, but could bring us to even higher numbers, of course, if they have a lot of purples on the opposing team. And you basically just use this as a very strong hit option. We're using the Keeper of Paths, which of course has been nerfed down from what it previously is to a 15 mana cost and a maximum of 10 gem spawn. In this particular context, when using Archmage's hero class, it'll be an 8 gem spawn, though 8's still pretty sizable compared to 10. However, if you do wish to get the full 10, you would have to give up your plus 3 purple mana in order to go for a 2 extra gem spawn. So it really just depends. You want 2 extra gem spawn on him or 3 extra mana on your hero. You can really go either way depending on how you want to go about it. Aside from that, we're using Timberwolf to tank. There are a couple other ways to do it. There's also a lot of resummon in this place, like the blue-purple that creates green, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it has like a Spirit Fox resummon, so you can end up putting that there and having that like lower down and resummon to your first slot. However, we're just kind of going down the Fenrir if we truly need a resummon. Keep in mind when it comes to Journey events, you do want to win as quickly as possible to maximize your score, so you generally want to prioritize speed and damage over all else. Could even replace out Timberwolf for another like mana accumulation or another damage source, or even the Keeper if you really want to. But damage is better over everything else. However, you do lose points for losing troops, but you can preserve those points some by actually resummoning back. So with something like this, we can end up wasting this ability in order to resummon. You can do other options that can extra turn into it as well. It really just depends. Obviously, there's also exploding weapons, but probably not worth giving out over Doomed Volge unless you just happen to not have Doomed Volge. In which case you would need to opt for a exploding weapon, most likely with a resummon would be your best bet. But this is pretty much the team. Fenrir, Bless Enchant, gets all that mana, has some true damage if you want to poke with it. Keeper of Paths, 1 is required, plus really good damage, and a good, I would just say good gem spawn, but it's 8 or 10, depending on if you go full team or 3. Archmage's hero, with Doomed Volge, is for all the mana, and can be opted out for Spirit Walker, and our tank. That's pretty much the whole team. Does basically what it needs to do, and essentially just a stronger version of Journey Troop. It's going to be doing more damage, even with his double magic, in every single hit that it does, so pretty nice. But if you don't have that weapon, you're going to need to opt for, I might as well show it now since we're talking so much about it. Tribute, I would grab Tribute. So, of course, as far as the lower range for that place, this was a trip I was talking about earlier. You can transform a selected mana color to green and then summon a Spirit Fox, so you can actually summon without losing your turn as well. And this green will end up being all the green that you feed to Keeper of Paths. Obviously, don't convert out purple, convert out any color that isn't purple, and then just go crazy with this guy doing purple. This team will also do the full 10 gem spawn. And keep in mind, while using multiple of him does not increase your score by multiple, you do need at least one of him on your team. And he does have double magic, so he will be hitting decently hard and can easily be your only damage source. This is also the cheapest team you could pretty much get if you don't have Doomed Volge, and if you don't have any of the higher rarity stuff to end up using, as you could get the 3 keepers just from buying into the event. And in doing so, or by you doing the event key drop table this week, you can easily get the ultra rare of Spirit Dancer, which kind of fills in the rest of the team. So that's all you're going to need to do for that. Anyways, but it's still going to be annoying compared to what Journey events used to be. The Fortune Glory event, this has technically ended. However, if you have not spent your points, you are still able to spend whatever points you have over the next week. However, you will not be able to earn any more points. If you're in a position where you have not spent them yet and you still want to, at this point, the main one that you should probably go for is the pet. You should buy this 5 times and then buy the 6th one for the golden version, as essentially everything else here you can get at a later point. It seems like these armors are coming back every single year, so you could just wait then for 1 year from now. Time Long, while it won't be coming through the next event, it will be in the drop table in a couple months, so by the time we have the next Shen Tang event, you'll be able to get him in event key drop table during that week, or even just randomly when you're opening mythics in about a month or two. You should be able to go and end up getting him in drop table. Probably by April or March when you open the monthly mythics, you should be able to see him in drop table by then. Definitely by May, potentially by March. I mean, definitely by May, potentially by April, I mean. And of course, the power orb, which was here, not really that needed, but you know, it's a pretty cheap power orb if you already had gotten the points for it. But if you haven't spent your points yet, definitely prioritize getting the pet over all else, I would personally say. Especially if you have enough to get it 6 times, which is 700 total points. Anyways, aside from that, other events that we actually have going on this week is Tuesday, we have the faction event for Hellgates, a brown-red restriction, so we have access to Tesla, Guard's Avatar, Marilith, Bork, stuff like that. Harpy Mage on turn 2 Empower, technically. Wednesday, we have the War Gear pet. Thursday, we have ourselves the class event for Warden. Warden is a weird hero class. It has a very niche purpose. It is, if I'm not mistaken, still the only hero class to this day that has the combination of Greenstorm and Dispel. This is a little bit less needed now that we have Wand, as Wand has basically Dispel by doing Curse. However, it is still the only hero class that naturally has that combination, so there are a few teams that use it, most notably Truffle team, or even some Beatrix teams, where they want to have the Greenstorm, because obviously they need a lot of greens to keep their loop going, while also just mana accumulating, but they also need the Dispel, as both of their abilities will do nothing if the enemy has Submerge. So it's a great Submerge counter, particularly for Underworld, where there's a lot of Submerge. It's probably the most submerged mode in the game, other than going to like Merlantis Explore 12 or something. But it is really heavy for Submerge, and having Dispel like that is really useful, and it makes it so you don't have to use Wand on your team if you want to opt for a different weapon, or even, oh, I was just going to say no hero at all, but never mind. If you're using this, you would definitely have hero on your team. However, it would opt you for a different weapon if you don't want to have to run Wand. Anyways, aside from that, this Friday, we have ourselves a Vault Event weekend, so we'll be able to go and farm a bunch of loot. Of course, we farming that, grinding that, going for our normal grind as we normally do, at least 300 if not more, and just get a bunch of loot and see how it happens. But good old Vault Event, just basically spam Explore and just get a ton of loot. You can do it in many locations, but Explore is definitely by far the quickest way to go farm it. And it'll be taking place this Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Great time to be gaining any resources within the game. Aside from that, of course, under Spire, we'll be going over that when we go over to teams. But it is Grimswood's restriction. This does mean we get to try some things for the first time, most notably I cannot say this name. Lunarelin. Lunar. That's obviously Lunar. Lunarelin? Whatever that is. Leon? Lunar Leon. It's like Leon with lunar and then an E in between. Lunarion. Lunar Leon. Something like that. But anyways, this dragon, I personally never really gotten to use it because obviously we just immediately got Stellarix, which kind of almost invalidated the other 6. However, the other 6 are still used on occasion. They did get buffed when Stellarix got buffed to the roof, so they do more damage now, so they're actually pretty comparable to Diamantina damage, oddly enough. A little bit less, if I'm not mistaken, than Diamantina, but still pretty high up there. So they're really great when you lack other options in a given category, and given that this thing is Grimwoods and you might lack other options, there's a chance you might have this, but lack like all the mythics from the location. So if that is your case, it's probably your best damage source that you'll end up having for the place. So you can end up working out really well. And of course, we're restricted to Grimwoods weapons as well, which unfortunately there's not that many good Grimwoods weapon. I was looking through them. They don't even have an explodey weapon. I was looking through the weapons and I was like, oh, what explodey weapon should I go run? And then I was looking, and unless I'm really blind, I don't see a single explodey weapon here. Hello? Explode? Literally none of them even have explode. There's some that do gem spawn if you want to build in like pure war gear. There's like an armor tier weapon. There's this which technically explodes, the Doomed Glaive. Actually, I'm literally using it here. There's like Destroy that you get like pretty much for free from that one hero class, but you don't have a single explodey weapon. How do we not have one? How was this not like an explodey weapon this week or something? Yeah, we didn't get one. We have like Doom Skulls to explode with in multiple different ways, but we don't have just like general straight up just explode the board kind of thing with resummon. Because I was going to use that for the cheaper team and then realize, oh, it doesn't exist. But anyways, that's really weird. I felt like every kingdom by now would have had it, but apparently not. Anyways, Soulforge. As far as Soulforge is concerned this week, we have ourselves, I believe, nothing. Nothing. One thing I guess to mention is what was relevant about Shivanu Vespera. Oh, yes. This is the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that we have been able to get Shibanu Vespera since we've gotten that one Hourglass troop, the Mother of Time, why do I forget her name? Isn't it Mother of Time? No, I do not want my Grimswood restriction. It is Daughter of Time. But Daughter of Time, since we've gotten Daughter of Time, I believe this is the first time we've gotten her. I haven't really been mentioning too many teams with Daughter of Time lately, but she is still just as broken as she always been. And one of her more interesting synergies that she has, though there's a lot of synergies, but one of the more interesting ones that she actually has is with Vespera. Vespera, to this day, if you're looking for a fun gimmick, is still the best way to get max stats in the game. Stats currently cap at 1,000. It's been like that for several years now. I'm not sure if they're ever going to raise that or what. But as it currently stands, Vespera is the best way in the entire game to get every single one of your allies to 1,000 all stats. Is this ever particularly viable? Not really. Is it fun, though? Yes. And one of the better synergies for that these days is actually doing it with Daughter of Time. Building out like a pure yellow team using Vespera, Daughter of Time, and 2 other things, depending on what you want to opt for. But something like that is currently the best way to gain max stats, as well as the quickest way to gain max stats if you're looking to ever do so, just for the fun of it. There aren't really too many viable teams that end up using her ultimately, just because she's really slow and luck-based, but it is worth considering. If nothing else, just for the sheer fun of the troop, if you just been wanting to try to find something, but definitely not high priority to craft. Speaking of that, pretty much no weapons, I would say, this week are particularly high priority. If you are going to go for one, probably Doomed Glaive. Doomed Glaive, you saw us using on that one team. It does full AoE damage. It converts all browns to Doom Skulls, so it can do a lot of damage, can really counter out brown teams as well, if you want to opt for it in situations where that is relevant. And just does overall just a really high sheer amount of damage. Hope's Crescent, while of the armor tier weapons isn't really used that often, is an armor tier weapon. It eliminates all armor from an enemy and then deals some damage to them. And if their life is greater, it deals triple damage. The biggest issue with this is this generally doesn't one-shot. Even though you're dealing all their armor away and dealing triple damage to them in most situations that you'd be using this, or pretty much all situations if you're bothering to use this weapon, that triple damage in a lot of situations is not actually enough to one-shot. If it is, then it can be worth doing, but it's a really weird range where the enemy both has higher HP than you, but this is also able to one-shot. It's a very short range, and it's a one that you generally wouldn't bother bringing this weapon out for, even though in premise it is really good at that damage range. The biggest issue with it is it's very slow. You're just killing one thing at a time. Has like almost no follow-up. I think it might have like a little bit off its little perk thingy, but it doesn't really get much at all compared to, you know, like an actual mana accumulation, extra turn kind of weapon. So overall, just doesn't really get used much. But those are pretty much the only ones if you are going to be going for any. And the rest are just this standard stuff we normally have. And of course, make sure to get the weapon of the Path of the Wolf, not from Soulforge, but specifically from the event itself, as it's pretty much free for the gems there. Or, you know, you get it for free while just buying into the tiers. Anyways, aside from that, anything else to mention? I think we are good to go to get into team. So, as far as teams are concerned, we kind of already mentioned it earlier, but during the event is Purple War Gear. Your main weapon that you're going to be using of choice is by far the Doomed Vulge. If you have it, use it on every single one of your builds that you want to go do. It is going to be the main weapon that you do. It's the main thing that you're going to want to switch out as far as the main premise of the team is, do you want to run Archmagus or do you want to run Spirit Walker? Spirit Walker gives you more Keeper of Paths gem spawn, whereas Archmagus will give you substantially more mana. So really it depends which route you want to go down. As far as the low rarity team, you basically have Spirit Dancer into Keeper of Paths, and then you replace out options based on if you have it. Do you have Doomed Vulge? Well, you put a Doomed Vulge onto the team. If you have some kind of mythic that you might want to run there, like let's say Wolf Garrick or the Fenrir, you could put that there. Or if you feel like you just want to run something else there just for the fun of it, just put that there. But this is the basic premise and the super cheap one. It only uses the epic that you get from the event itself, which you can just buy into guarantee this week, and a Spirit Dancer, which is ultra rare, and if you don't currently have it, use the event key for it. So very absurdly cheap team, doesn't require the Doomed Vulge from a couple weeks ago, doesn't require any weapon or even hero for that matter, unless you do want to opt to put it in. And you simply just keep spamming the Keeper of Paths until you win. Keep in mind, of course, this is nerfed Journey Troop, so the maximum it's going to be getting is 10 gem spawn, or 11 if you get it shiny level 2. However, it is still 10 gem spawn. 10 gem spawn's not small. While it's a lot more consistent than what Journey Troops were at their peak, it's still good. Just keep in mind, if you are going to be opting for Spirit Dancer instead of some other option on your team, that you make sure to never convert away purple. You should only be converting away every color that isn't purple, so that when you actually cast your Keeper of Paths, there will be plenty of purple on the board that it can extra turn off of, meaning even though it's only doing 10, it'll be doing it on a board that is a lot more condensed and has a lot less, or a lot higher concentration of purple. Even though you're not actually creating purple from the Spirit Dancer, you're still thinning out the board to have more purples on it compared to other colors that you're converting away. Anyways, aside from that, as far as the faction event is concerned, for the Hell Gate, This is a Hellgate, right? Yeah, Hellgate. I forget its name for a second. As far as Hellgate is concerned, of course, you're allowed to use any color hero weapon when it comes to Under Spire, even though it's brown-red. So basically, just use a mana accumulation weapon with whatever your best quick kill option is. For this case, we're going down the good old Sir Quentin Hadley Guard's Avatar route. Sir Quentin Hadley was available last week. Guard's Avatar is still a little bit annoying to get, though he was in Soulforge somewhat recently. As far as the higher rarity team, or not, actually, this is the low rarity team. This is the higher range team, though you can run this the whole time. This is actually the lower rarity team. Though it does use a legend. It is using double legend of Tesla, and if you don't have Wand, you could replace this out for any mana accumulation option. Obviously, Wand just happens to work out best, but you can put anything there, it'll be fine. The main premise of the team is Bork double Tesla into Mechanist. Mechanist gives Bork half mana start, so he can get his thing going a little bit quicker. Bork feeds all of its mana to Tesla, you cast Tesla, and then you win. As is pretty much every Tesla team. Click Tesla to win. Sometimes multiple times, but just click it and just does substantial damage boost ratio from all the armor on the opposing team. Next, we have ourselves the good old Pure Faction. As far as Pure Faction is concerned, it is basically spam Judge the Dead until you win, and then you just opt for other options depending on if you want any of their utilities. So the main premise of Judge the Dead is he deals a bunch of damage to all enemies, boosted by his souls. And one way that you can get souls a little bit quicker is use the Chironus. As far as what this guy does, he gains 1 soul for each purple gem on the board, and then explodes all those purple gems. So if there's about 10 purple gems on the board, he'll not only explode all 10 of them, but also gain you 10 souls, which will get you closer to your soul boost ratio. On top of that, every single time you cast an ally spell, you'll end up gaining 3 souls. So in this particular instance, we will gain 9 souls on top of whatever souls we get for this cast. Every single time we cast an ability there, including Judge of the Dead, even just it casting will end up giving us 9 total extra souls. And one other thing that's pretty nice about this is on top of all of its mana accumulation that it ends up doing, as well as soul gain, it does have a 50% higher bonus souls that ends up doing, and this will increase the cap amount of damage you end up getting from Judge of the Dead. Normally you'd be able to get 40 souls, and with this you'll be able to go get 60 souls, which brings its damage range to about 100 or slightly over 100 depending on what your magic level is, as well as even higher than that, of course, based on all of the faction boosts that you'll be having. So it can end up hitting pretty hard. Not the hardest, but it's one of those factions where you basically just AoE spam until you win. And as long as you have 2 Judge of the Dead with a Coronis going into the final fight, you should be perfectly fine in most circumstances. As far as the Under Spire is concerned, this is a little bit of an annoying restriction, though we do have some options. The restriction is specifically for Grimswood, so you're allowed to use any option in Grimswood. However, your weapons are also restricted to Grimswood, which is probably more so the downside, as that is a pretty restrictive restriction. There are not too many good Grimswood weapons in the game. A few handful of them, like obviously Doom Clave is pretty good. However, on the lower end of like low rarity ones, there aren't too many options to really work with, unfortunately. But this basic premise, we're going just AoE spam. We're doing Doomglaive into Lunar Larian. We're kind of using Wolf Garrick for cleanup, though you can easily replace this out for pretty much anything you feel like. It doesn't have to be Wolf Garrick. And then we're using a Neri, which unfortunately does have a little bit of a backfire, but it does create blue. And we're kind of using that to try to get our Lunarian up. We can opt for to go down a little bit more of the green route and end up using the same blue-purple that we end up for the other team, and end up using that for not only resummon, but also for the green that we need. So it really just depends what way you want to run it, but this one goes really AoE heavy. We can even go heavier if we really wanted to go replace out Wolf Garrick for such a similar option. Though do keep in mind, if you are going to be going down a very War Gear heavy route, keep in mind that the Keeper of Paths does not gain double magic here. He still gains his 20% extra stats, which I believe is for Grimswood and yeah, War Gear this week. However, which is most of the kingdom. Well, maybe not most, but like half the kingdom. But keep in mind, if you do use this, he will not have double magic in Under Spire. He'll only have double magic for the Journey event that's going on this week. So if you're trying to run the same troop that you do for Journey event, you can pretty much for this game. Oh, actually, you can't quite. Actually, now that I think about it, yeah, you can't do it quite 1-to-1 because you can't use purple weapons and stuff like that. So you can't use like the Verge, which is why we don't have it here. But you can still run like a Keeper of Souls related team. I mean, a Keeper of Paths related team. Like if you're running this as your Journey team or something very similar, like you could run this team. This is all from Grimswood. But you know, if you're running something like this, you can't run this for the Under Spire. So do be mindful of that. And if you are running something like the Spam Keeper of Paths, he will not have double magic, so he will fall off pretty quickly as far as overall damage, which is why I kind of went for more of the Judge of the Dead route. We went with a soul boost ratio route for once. One weapon I saw here is like, I might as well run that. The Hellblade. If you don't currently have this, you should be able to get this on the Tuesday faction event tomorrow. This is a weapon that only comes around like pretty much once a year, so if you do want to go get it, Tuesday faction event tomorrow is when you will get it. You might have noticed it wasn't in Soulforge there, but that's because only tomorrow can you get it, either from the Soulforge or from the event itself, from the faction event. So if you do want to get this weapon, only available tomorrow, but that doesn't mean it is available this week, so that's what this team is utilizing. As far as what it does, ends up dealing some damage to an enemy, boosted by its souls at a 1-to-1 ratio. So if we have the default of 40 souls, which this team is what's going to be doing, we'll end up getting about 100-ish damage, a little bit more because of all the Underspire bonuses. So obviously, not something huge, but when you're kind of scraping the bin for weapons here, it is a okay weapon. If you want to go down that route. Cockroaches we're actually using as our main mana accumulator. Not something that's really used too often as a main mana accumulator, but it's really good in early game for making sure you don't die. It is both mana drain and entangle, meaning if you put this on the first slot, you basically made the first slot incapable of doing anything to you, as you'll mana drain all their mana down to 0, and you'll entangle them, meaning they can't do any skull damage, so you stop both their skull damage and their spell damage. And of course, you just do this on whatever, once you're safe into whatever on the enemy team is the biggest threat at a given time, that has the most amount of mana, and then you just get a bunch of brown mana. That brown mana then feeds into the rest of your team, and you kind of play it somewhat similar to how you would do the Underspire team, the Underworld team, where you basically spam the Judge of the Dead until you end up winning. You can opt for one more mana accumulation, even switching out your hero weapon for a mana accumulation weapon if you don't have this weapon or don't want to get this weapon. You can end up going down that route and have 2 mana accumulators going into double Judge of the Dead. But Judge of the Dead being a legend that you get from Underspire makes it pretty cheap to end up getting, as you just throw Chaos Shards there whenever and you'll be able to get it. But everything else in the team also being pretty cheap, and this is literally from the event tomorrow as well, that you can end up getting from it. Aside from that, as far as the Warden class event, this takes place this Thursday, and it will be a restriction of specifically beasts from Grimswood. As far as this is concerned, you can pretty much run the standard strategy that is always run. Just run whatever your best AoE weapon is into first slot, running Archmages or any similar hero class that gains 50% mana start into a bunch of extra mana, and the rest of your team you just fill out into whatever more mana accumulation you want to do. Spirit Fox is here for cleanup in case they have a revive. That one really annoying 100% revive guy, of course. Though you can opt for other stun off a hero and stuff if you really want to, like Titan or something, but then you get a lot less purple. And then Direwolf, we're doing a double brown. We're using this purely for his double brown. We're actually never casting his ability, and this double brown will basically give us a much higher boost. In total on this team, we have a +5 purple and a +3 brown in totality across the team, as well as a Spirit Fox to poke them out and potentially even mana accumulate if the cascaded removal of yellows ends up mana accumulating for anything. So it has a few options there, but basically as per usual, just spam your best AoE weapon that you have available within the restriction, and just keep doing that with whatever mana accumulators you have behind it. And as everything, aside from, of course, a good old Vault event this weekend. But anyways, guys, if you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Definitely feel free to like on the video. Helps a lot and is greatly appreciated. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave them there, and we'll get around to them all. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.